Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Non-Native Leader. I'm Daniele and I'm the host of the video podcast where I talk to people who are non-native English speakers, but they're building an international career in different areas, from fintech to NGOs, from art and films and movies to finance, commercial. I like to talk to people and I like to talk to people from various industries. Yeah, so that's the spirit. If you follow the previous episodes, it's about sharing life stories, challenges, emotions, and wins. Of course, we all love celebrating wins. And talking about wins and celebrating, today I'm glad to have here with me 𝗚𝗏𝗏𝗏 or George, or I always try to do my best with names, but 𝗚𝗏𝗏𝗏. And thank you very much for being here with me, George, or
My
Georgios.
pleasure. My pleasure, Daniel. My pleasure.
Great. So I usually start with a very simple question. Who are you? Well, you have already answered that one. The next question would be, where are you?
So I'm in a very small island in the middle of the Mediterranean called Cyprus. Europeans usually know what I'm talking about, but I'm not sure if, the rest of the world knows about Cyprus because it's so small. We are a divided island, unfortunately. There's local strife, but we've had peace for over 50 years now, for less than 50 years, actually, 49 years.
Yep.
But it's a beautiful island. It's very safe, by the way. If you want to come, feel free. It's
Yes.
wonderful,
I
beautiful, sunny, beaches, everything.
Mountains, don't forget the mountains.
Mountains,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
yeah,
true.
I love them. Yeah, I confirm. I've been
Yes,
there and I can confirm 100%.
there you go.
Lovely. And yeah, so and then the next question would be, what do you do? Keep it really
So,
basic.
really basic. I used to be a university professor for about 20 years. I was also a consultant in the software development industry for, well, I still am a consultant in the software development industry, going on for about 30 years now. I started my first company in tech when I was 20 years old, and this year is going to be the big 50. Uh, exactly, yeah. So I've been through, the changes in tech. I started I guess my generation was the one that started without internet and ended up getting internet in their early 20s, I want to say.
Yeah.
We had the opportunity to use a computer and learn about computers through magazines and through pretty much talking to each other. And it was the time when, if you were a hobbyist, you basically were supposed to know how to write code.
Mm.
And my hobby became my profession. Moving on, I went to Carnegie Mellon. I studied for cognitive science, not computer science. Well, a double major in computer science. And then I received a master's and a PhD in computer science from Tufts University. So I've lived in the States for
Wow.
about 8 years. And then I returned to Cyprus, and I've lived in Cyprus ever since. And that's
Great.
what I do.
Wow. Yeah, in a nutshell, as they say.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's great. So we have already touched on a lot of interesting points. And I don't know what you're talking about, life before computers, because obviously I'm very young, so
Of
I'm
course,
I'm joking. We're pretty much the
I'm
same
very,
age.
I'm very young
Yeah, I
as well.
guess.
I don't know what possessed me.
Yeah, it's weird when you feel like you want to share, you want to involve younger people, but then, there is this sort of divide, because I mean, what's life before computers? What's a pocket calculator? That's
Forget that. Forget that. Let me tell you a story. I was teaching and I wanted an example that involved the transformation in graphics from one thing to another. So I'm in front of class and I'm talking to my university students about Michael Jackson's black and white video, if I remember correctly, where he changes faces,
yes, I remember the one. Yeah.
there you go. And they were looking at me like I was from a different planet, man. They didn't know who Michael Jackson was, and they hadn't seen the video, obviously. And I'm like taken
Seriously?
aback. Seriously, you haven't seen this video? I mean, and then I realized that I was talking to people who were probably born after the video was out, and so they would probably have nothing to do with that kind of music. So I ended up being very frustrated at myself for thinking that I was close to them, but I was really not.
Yeah,
I mean, we all feel young at heart, but the generational gap is real.
it is indeed. Yeah. And I mean, we are probably the last generation to have witnessed this transition in a way,
Exactly. Yeah.
because we know life before the internet, we know life before digital, but now at the same time we are working 100% digital, and we're having this
Yeah.
conversation online, so this is something I was reflecting on the other day, because this is, yeah, it's a bit of a burden on our generation in a way, but I don't
I
know.
don't want to say it's a burden. I'd rather say that it's a blessing
Hmm.
because
Yes.
we
Okay.
understand we understand what the technology can do for you, and we understand what the technology can't do for you because we've been there. We've seen how to do things without technology. For example, and for your younger listeners, this is going to sound very, very weird. But there was this book called an encyclopedia.
Ah,
In there, when our teachers asked us to write about some topic, we would go and pick the tome that had that topic in it and read about it. So no chat GPT, no Google,
nope.
not even, Yahoo and Alta Vista for the generation after me. So
Yeah.
it was it was something that you had to do research, you had to do it, you had to actually search for the information. And we understood that if you search for the information has some kind of credibility given where it comes from. Today, there's no thought about the credibility of information.
Yeah,
People that
absolutely.
if it's out there, it must be credible. So I can sit here and talk to you about encyclopedias and have people believe that encyclopedias are real, whereas, they may not be.
Yeah, who knows? Well, we
Who knows?
can live with a bit of a mystery.
Yeah,
People,
actually,
go
I do
out
have,
and do
I do
find
have the
out.
behind,
Is
I
he
do
telling
have
the
the
truth?
behind.
Okay, you have one.
Yeah.
So you have evidence, yeah?
Yes, I do have evidence.
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't know where mine is, to be honest, but I'm sure I have one somewhere. Maybe one or two
Well,
volumes are left, but yeah.
pretty sure, yeah, like everyone from our era has one.
Yes,
So,
absolutely, absolutely. I'd like to explore a bit more here, 'cause so you mentioned a few things, moving to the States, working, software teaching, building your own companies, consulting. This is a lot, okay? So let's get our
it is.
bearings.
It
Um,
is.
so you're pretty like your career has been and it is to these days very global and international. You're sitting in Cyprus, but you work globally.
Yeah.
So if you had to identify one main challenge for you in your international experience, what would that be?
So the most difficult thing, I guess, is understanding what you're saying when you're saying it in the context of diversity, equality, and inclusion. Because
Hmm.
when we start discussing things of touchy natures, I want to say, then what makes sense in my language, in Greek, may be a no-no in English, or in German, or in French, or in
Yeah.
Italian. So the cultural aspect, I think, is the most difficult to understand, particularly if you haven't lived in a country and you're using the language of that country. And when you're using the words that you want to use because you understand what you want to say in your native language, you may be coming across very different than what your point is actually. So that's what I found difficult at first.
Yeah.
I was lucky because when I went to the university, the first time I left Cyprus for the United States, um, at my university, there were no other Cypriots or Greeks. So I couldn't speak Greek. And all of my friends were Americans. And I had French, Italians, but most of them were Americans. So they got to help me understand the way of discussing things in appropriate ways. And I think that's the most important, I don't know, thing
Yeah.
that we can get when we are actually immersing ourselves in a different culture. So if I want to learn English and I speak English in the way that I speak Greek, I am going to make mistakes. If my audience knows that, then it's okay. And if I allow my audience, if I tell them, hey, you know, guys, I may make mistakes, please excuse them, and please feel free to correct me. That lifts the burden of not feeling confident about your language
Mhm.
skills. And it also empowers your listeners, your audience, to help you. And so it becomes a very natural
Yes.
conversation where people are going to say, you know what, maybe you shouldn't say that, try saying it in this way.
Yeah.
And it's fine.
It's great. It becomes like an exchange,
Exactly.
like going back to the roots of the word to communicate, so to put in common. So this is me, this is what I can offer. What can you offer in exchange? And then we meet halfway. So
Mhm.
this is at least the way I love imagining it, like building a bridge. So if you want to build a bridge, you need two people because and you need to meet halfway. That's the
Exactly.
only way, the only possible way you can build a bridge. And in
Mhm.
communication, it works exactly in the same way. And I mean, this is why I always tell people, look, okay, I know you are not confident, but at the end of the day, we all want to communicate, and
Exactly.
there is pressure, of course, because we want to get a message across, but at the same time, should be in like mutual interest, having a fruitful conversation. This is the way I
Exactly.
see it.
The listener should want to receive your message, and you should want to provide a message to your listener, and vice versa, obviously. See, I had this professor, Herbert Simon, Nobel laureate. He is the father of AI, many consider. And we had a discussion about learning languages because back then, when I attended Carnegie Mellon, one of the requirements was to take a semester of language, a foreign language, well, foreign to Americans. not
Of course,
for
yeah.
to the foreigners.
Of
But
course.
um, I took the chance to learn Japanese,
Whoa.
and so we were talking with him about learning languages, and he said, I can speak 17 languages. And I said,
Gee.
wow, that's
Wow.
awesome. And
Impressive.
he said, yeah, three, I can speak fluently. The other 14, I can speak with a phrase book in my pocket and no consideration of my self-esteem. That's what he said.
That's pretty
So,
clever.
exactly. So if you don't feel the burden of, oh my God, I need to sound confident, no, think about it the other way. Reframe this into the following. I am making an effort to speak in your language. So give me a break,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
Help me
Yes.
out here. Give me a
Yeah.
moment. So,
I love this, Georgios. I love it. And yes, this is this is it. This is like mindset uh, at play.
yeah, it's
It's
all about mindset.
yeah.
It's the way you frame the act of communication. If you try to communicate, putting the burden on you and the fear of, oh my God, I may make a mistake. Well, native speakers make mistakes.
We all do.
So,
We all
I
make
mean,
mistakes. Yeah.
we speak in our language and we make mistakes. We slip of the tongue, get confused, say other words. So, what's the problem if you do that in a different language?
That's it. Yeah. It's
Exactly.
the message is the important thing. So once I should do it. One day I will do it. I will have a giant print of the word clarity and I'll put it back there because that is the aim, clarity. It's not like speed, it's not perfection, clarity.
No.
So if we're clear, we
Exactly.
can communicate, and
Mhm.
that's all that matters, in my opinion. Uh,
I agree.
and
I
yeah,
totally,
I was about to say, I think you agree.
I
I
totally
didn't
agree.
want to force my opinion on you, but like
No,
it's
I believe that clarity is the most important thing. If you can pass the message along, and the message that you want is the one that gets heard, then you're good.
yep,
And I don't care if you said it in a beautiful accent or if your accent feels like your native language. It doesn't matter. As
yep.
long as the other person understands what you're saying, you're good.
Yeah. And yeah, so talking about mindset, this is a great way to put it, Georgios. And when you reflect back on your career and on your life, has this helped you in any way?
So I went to Italy once and I went to a hotel where nobody spoke Italian. I am pleased to say that I speak very, very, very little Italian, enough to get me in trouble. Um, and, I just followed my professor's advice and I said, you know what? I'm going to try it. And immediately I saw the demeanor of the hotel employees change from slightly, oh my God, he doesn't understand Italian and I don't speak English, so how are we going to communicate? To, oh, okay. And they were very slow with what they were saying, and they were very, I guess, they tried to be careful of the words that they used because I would say, I don't understand.
Yes.
And they would try to explain it again in a different word with diagrams, but we communicated. And in all of my life, I've I've lived this. I've tried to communicate with other people. I've tried to reach other people. I've tried to pass messages to other people in a way that, in any way that I could. And I think that's important when you're learning a language, when you're speaking a language. if you're not afraid to make mistakes, if you're not afraid to um, diagram something, if you're not afraid to say a few words in your own language and maybe they'll pick up what you're saying, if you're not afraid in general,
Mm.
then you will communicate. If you're afraid, then you will never communicate.
Yes. Back to the mindset thing, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah. There is this fantastic book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by
Mhm.
Susan Jeffers, I think.
Okay.
And
Haven't
yeah, I mean, I always love to quote it because it's like the perfect mindset idea, in my opinion. So there is fear, and
Mhm.
fear is there for a reason. Originally, fear is there to protect us, right?
Mhm.
From those evil monsters they used
Oh,
to
yeah.
roam around in the good old days, right? So fear, in a sense, is there to save us, to protect us. And this is
Right.
why when we feel discomfort, then fear is the first reaction, really.
Exactly.
But at the same time, we will never really get rid of fear fully.
Oh.
So we want to become friend, make friend with your fear. I don't know how we can explain it, but at the same time, it's fear is there, so we
Mhm.
might as well embrace it, if you allow this buzzword,
Yeah.
and then it shouldn't prevent us, but it should help us to do things, and so this is why feel the fear and do it anyway. Like bungee
Exactly.
jumping,
Yeah.
these sort of things, you are afraid,
Mhm.
and it's normal. It's totally, it's fine, to be afraid, but not fear prevent you from doing things, but be that turn that into an enabler, if you will. Yeah, and that's what I think. I'm afraid well, I shouldn't say most of the time, but I do feel my fear, and I'm trying to deal with it.
Everybody feels fear.
Yeah.
If you don't feel fear, then there's something wrong with you. Check it out.
Yeah.
But,
Like the Terminator style. I'm never afraid,
exactly, exactly. But he was a robot, so.
Exactly. Yes,
Um,
exactly.
but let me give your audience another way of looking at fear. What's the worst thing that can happen? So you try to speak English, or you try to communicate, and you're not good at it, whatever good may mean, right? What's the worst thing that can happen? Are you going to die? Are they going to throw you out of the country? Are they going to put you in jail? Worst thing that can happen is that you're not get your message across. So, big whoop, like a friend of mine used to say. You know, it, it
Yes.
it's absolutely, and even if you're in a professional setting and you say, I apologize ahead for my poor pronunciation or for my English or for if I may say something that doesn't get across correctly, please feel free to stop me and ask
Mhm.
me any question you want. Immediately, you're putting the the burden of understanding to other people because you've apologized in advance.
Yep.
You know, I mean, you're putting it out there. I don't speak very well in this language, so please excuse me. Now, if you help me and we'll communicate, and I'll tell you exactly what I want to tell you, and that's it.
Yep. Going back to the bridge thing, right? So I'll build my part of the bridge, build yours.
Yeah, exactly. If we both take a step on the bridge, then it's better than if I try to run across the whole bridge.
Yes.
So that's what people need to have in mind.
Yes. It's
To not
precious
be afraid
advice.
because in reality, there's nothing to be afraid of. That's it.
Yes. I suppose once we get that clear, and by the way, this is an amazing piece of advice, in my opinion, but once we get that clear in our mind, then we are ready to grow. And like,
Yep.
it doesn't matter how much we study, how much we practice, if we don't get that clear in our mind. That's where it all starts, in my opinion, you know? And yeah,
Absolutely right.
you're the living proof, you know?
Thank you.
Well, because
Thank you very much.
I mean, you've done so many things, right? University, you've worked and you're still working as a consultant. You built your own company. So like the possibilities are endless and it's all down to, you know, changing that sort of mindset and getting into the bridge idea.
It's it's what you said. Be afraid and do it anyway.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I always think, you know, that episode with Sofia Vergara saying, "Oh, do you even know how clever I am in Spanish?" Well, that's the idea. We
Yes,
that's
exactly.
that's what we want to do,
Exactly.
you know. We have resources, so we tap into our resources and we get it out there. Yes, this is precious, Kyrgyz. So look, we're towards the end of our chat. So would you have like one final recommendation for people who want to have an international experience like you?
Um, yeah, be afraid and do it anyway. I like that. And what's the worst thing that could happen? If you just ingrain that in your head, what's the worst thing that could happen? Now, sometimes, the worst thing is going to be pretty bad, so don't do it. But most of the time, particularly in communication, the worst thing that may happen is, okay, you may offend somebody. Apologize. It's fine. And say, I'm sorry. I don't speak the language. I'm not a native speaker. It's fine.
Yep.
It's better than not communicating. It's better than being left alone because you're afraid. Because eventually, that's what fear does. It isolates us. And what's worse than isolation?
Especially because we are talking about communication. So there's no communication in isolation. Because this
Exactly.
is the perfect spirit of the non-native leader, you know? That is it. I
Thank you
think you've
so
summarized it perfectly. So I'd like to thank you very much, Jorgos. This has been incredibly insightful for me, and I hope also for the listeners.
much. It's been wonderful talking with you and getting to meet you, obviously, over the past few weeks. And chatting right now has been amazing. Thank you. I've had a lot of fun actually
That's,
discussing these things.
I'm glad. One day we could have a cup of coffee over an encyclopedia volume, the two of us. And
There we go.
okay, Jorgos, thank you very much again, and it's been a pleasure. And thanks everybody for sticking around. See you in the next episode. Bye.